First question is an issue that affects a lot of us. What plan do you have to improve transportation options for our senior residents who can no longer drive but want to continue living an active, productive lifestyle without being dependent on family and friends for rides? Well, Alche, we'll begin with you.
This is a great question, and this is one that I know that is important to everybody in this room. Now, one of the things that we are working on right now in the city of Virginia Beach is the development of autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles are going to be an option for creating mobility options for everybody. Now, I believe that everybody in this room knows that right now we do not have a transportation network that is feasible. And what I mean by that is it takes a long time to get anywhere with our HRT bus system. We need to continue to improve our transportation network, and I believe that part of that is going to be based on a technology that we are developing as we speak. We also need to continue to add more funding to Hampton Roads Transit to make sure that we have more regular bus routes and that we have more shuttle services, especially for our aging population. If I'm elected mayor, I am going to make sure that we pay close attention to our aging population. I'm going to work extremely close with the Mayor's Commission for Aging, and I want to be your champion. So I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work with the liaison, Barbara Henley, very, very closely to make sure that we are coming up with the best and creative solutions to getting you where you need to go.
Without question, I see that at my daily job, where people have trouble getting to their medical appointments, a lot of people on dialysis that have problems getting to their medical appointments. Yes, there is emergent technology. One of the things, unfortunately, in Virginia Beach, we're not designed and lends itself well to public transportation. You go to the big cities, New York, Boston, Chicago, it's a grid system. We got too many round neighborhoods, we got logistics that we got to deal with. Yes, the idea is we have to go into the neighborhoods. That's going to be the eventual solution to the problem. We got to pick people up to their homes and get them point to point. And even with public transportation, when you get close to the hospital or your doctor, a lot of folks still got to walk. And one of the problems that we do have in our population, when people move into a 65 or plus facility, they may walk in, but a couple of years later, they're in a wheelchair, they're immobile. So we have to take this into consideration. And as our city ages, both in terms of infrastructure and people, we have to make those accommodations to make sure that you get the care and quality of life. And not only getting to the doctor, let's get out, go to the restaurants, go to the movies, and live a quality life. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. This is an issue that you both touched on in your opening, but let's get more specific about solutions here. Here's the question. A number of areas throughout our city flood frequently. This can be particularly troublesome for our seniors. What action should be taken by the city to alleviate that, and how would you prioritize these areas? Mr. Dyer, let's begin with you.
Okay, great, thank you. One of the things I actually signed a contract where I committed to do a lot of things. And one of the first things I'm going to do, if I am blessed to become mayor, is to form a blue ribbon commission and get the right people to the table. Not to discuss this to the end. The trouble with government, sometimes we study things to death, but we got to get the engineers, both within the city but outside the city. We have to get some of the developers, but we also got to get the people that were adversely impacted by the floods. But let's bring the universities in. You know, the people that figure out what happens in other cities throughout the country and the world where they have best practices where we can deal with this. Now, I can tell you this is not a 5-year plan, this is not a 15-year plan, a 50-year plan. This is a lifelong plan that starts now. And it's going to cost billions and billions of dollars to fix this. It's just the nature of the land that we live in that lends itself to this. And to do that, we have to bring new prosperity in. We got to bring in all kinds of businesses and jobs. We cannot rely on the burden on the residential taxpayer to pay for these bills. We got to create the new wealth going forward. So not only as a city do we survive, but we continue to thrive. Thank you.
First off, we need to begin to clean out our ditches, we need to dredge our stormwater ponds, and we need to clean out our stormwater infrastructure so that it gets back to where it was engineered to be. We have a plan right now, a capital improvement plan that lays out a very orderly path on exactly how we're going to do this. But Bobby's right. This is a huge, huge issue that we're going to be dealing with for a long, long time. Now, when I was in the Netherlands last year, we were studying some of the larger data center operators. And I had a day off, and they said, Ben, what do you want to do today? And I was in a place called Eemshaven, Netherlands, which is a very large port city. And I've seen ports before. Obviously, we have a very large port in Hampton Roads, the Port of Virginia. But I had never seen these huge structures that they had at their ports. And I said, I'd like to go take a look at some of these storm gates and spillways. And so these tide gates are massive, massive structures. They sent me out there with one of the engineers who engineered these tide gates. And my main question to him was, how did you pay for these massive structures? These structures, these tide gates, billions and billions of dollars. Did anybody see 60 Minutes about a month ago in the Netherlands? This is exactly what I'm talking about. I asked them, how did you pay for these huge tide gates and spillway networks? Well, this is what they said. First, they got with their regional partners. So Eemshaven is right next to Groningen. They got with them, they came up with engineering plans on how they were going to come up with a roadmap to address these in a meaningful way. Once they had the engineering plans, they went to the European Union to get funding because this was now a national security risk. The Netherlands, and I've only got 15 seconds so I can't finish the story, we're going to need to work with our regional partners. We're already working with the city of Norfolk and the city of Chesapeake. We're going to come up with engineering plans based on the Dewberry study that we have just completed, and we are going to make meaningful fixes. This is going to take national and state funding, and we're going to get that because we're going to have shovel-ready projects that are ready to go.
Gentlemen, thank you. Our next question, obviously we are here because of a great organization, the Mayor's Commission on Aging, and I mean, just look at this turnout. The room is packed, so you have a room full of people who obviously are actively involved in their community. So here's the question for you. How do you plan to interact with the Virginia Beach Mayor's Commission on Aging? Can you think of a specific project that you would assign to them? Mr. Davenport.
I'm sorry,
how would you interact with the Mayor's Commission on Aging, and can you think of a specific project you would assign to them?
I was always a huge, huge fan of former Mayor Myra Obendorf, and she is the one who started this commission, and I believe that the attention that she paid to this commission was healthy for all of our community. We need to make sure that we are listening to all of you in this room, and you all have my word that when I am elected, I will be a champion for each and every one of you. I believe that the Mayor's Commission on Aging is one of the most important commissions that we have. Just as Les said, look at the turnout in this room. You all are a force when you work together. And I believe that I'm going to help you all come up with ideas to address the issues that are facing you all right now. As I said, Virginia Beach is sacred ground to me. I'm going to make sure that we move every part of our city together forward. And so you all have my word that once I'm elected, this will not be the last time you will see me. You will see a lot of me. Thank you. Thank you.
It's organizations like this that make the glue that holds communities like Virginia Beach together. It's a valued, time-tested organization that deserves respect and consideration. Now, over my years, I came up with a saying that good government should never fear an engaged and educated public. It's bringing people to the table, but we also, as a city, have to provide the resources that are necessary, for you to, have a quality of life. And let me say that our Health and Human Services Department, my goodness, they are being stretched. There are more and more people coming on public assistance. We got to make sure that we are properly funded in a lot of ways to make sure that a lot of the initiatives are, in place. But one of the best things we can do in terms of initiatives is really emphasize prevention programs, fall prevention, things of that nature, and making sure, whether it be diabetes, health, and welfare, we got to provide the necessary tools that the leaders of this commission need to do their job effectively. And if you notice, there are more and more places coming up. And I am now a memory certified physical therapist. Alzheimer's is really becoming prominent. We're actually opening up a number of centers in Virginia Beach. Once again, we have to become a city of inclusion and to make sure everybody is valued. But let's give special attention to the seniors who contributed so much to making this not only city great, but our country great, our veterans. God bless you for what you've done. It's time for us to take care of you.
Thank you both. As we all age a little bit, this is an issue that becomes increasingly important for all of us. There is a considerable shortage of affordable housing for seniors in Virginia Beach. Do you have any plans to promote more affordable housing units for the aging population? Do you feel that Virginia Beach residents should have priority over those coming from surrounding cities when trying to secure affordable housing in Virginia Beach? Mr. Dyer?
Major priority is to make sure that we don't price people out of their own homes. And one of the major things that we confront is a lot of folks are on fixed incomes. They're on Social Security, and the COLAs don't necessarily rise, with the cost of living. So it's essential that we keep certain costs for you down, especially with food, a livable space, and everything. Once again, we got to work with our housing authority. And once again, we also got to deal, we have a rising homeless population in this city. And I understand that there's 400 homeless children in our school system. So we got to take a look at this, not only as a senior problem, but a problem that exists throughout the city of Virginia Beach. Now, as a physical therapist, I am in the mansions and I'm in the trailer parks. I see all the neighborhoods where people live throughout the city. I've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of homes and see how people live and struggle. Once again, we have elderly disabled taking care of their elderly disabled spouses. We have people trying to decide whether to pay for their medicine or pay their water bill. The city has to be there to help.
This is an extremely difficult issue that's endemic of what's happening all over the United States. We need to continue to work on new ways to address this issue. One of the things that I have been a champion of is the tax relief program in the city of Virginia Beach. I've worked extremely close with the Commissioner of Revenue, Phil Kellum, to make sure that we extend this program well into the future so that our seniors on fixed incomes are not taxed out of their homes. I believe that this is an important program that can be grown to bring in new people who need this assistance. I will continue to work to make sure that we bring this tax relief program to the forefront. And so I hope that all of you will help support me with that. I believe that we can do other things such as creating density bonuses for developers that are out there that are going to create less than market rate housing. These are issues that I have worked on with the workforce housing program that we have in the city. We have not done a very good job so far, but there is no city in the United States that has done a very good job. We're going to do better than that. We're going to address this issue head on, and we're going to come up with solutions that will have an impact for all of you.
Thank you. You have both talked about the need to create jobs and to bring more people into Virginia Beach, make it a more livable city. But along with that comes new development, and oftentimes that can be controversial. And this is our next question. What are your feelings on the sometimes controversial beachfront development in this city? Would you change the current growth trends? If so, how? I guess the real question is, how do you prioritize growth around a city as large as Virginia Beach? Does the oceanfront get a disproportionate share of attention?
Sure. So everybody knows that the oceanfront is an economic engine for our city. Now, it's not the only economic engine for our city, but however, we are sitting in a beautiful recreation center right now. The city of Chesapeake, which has very similar demographics to what we do, very similar median income, they don't have recreation centers in the city of Virginia Beach, and I believe a large part of that is because they do not have a tourism industry that creates revenues for our general fund. Tourism creates over $60 million a year for the city of Virginia Beach. We need to make sure that not only do we continue to reinvest in our economic engine, but that we continue to reinvent it. I believe that we are in a competition with Ocean City, Maryland, with Myrtle Beach, with any city on the eastern seaboard. So we have to protect our investment at the oceanfront. However, we have to spread development evenly throughout the city. I think that that's why I've been endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce. They believe that I have the vision to create economic engines all over the city of Virginia Beach. As a matter of fact, the Virginian Pilot endorsed me this morning, and one of the things that they said was that I had the vision to continue to move the city of Virginia Beach forward. And what that means is growing the city and keeping our real estate taxes low. I know that making sure that we keep our taxes low is a priority for everybody in this room, and it is one of my top priorities also. That's why we need to continue to grow the city.
I'm a big believer that the people that live here should have a say in our growth and development. You know, coming from a metropolitan area, that you get more traffic, there's higher taxes and things of that nature, more infrastructure needs. We have to grow, but we have to grow in a very balanced way. We got to make sure that development in one area doesn't adversely impact other areas. And one of the things I'm very proud of that, you know, since I've been the Centerville representative for 14 years, any development that came into my district had to be vetted with the adjacent communities to make sure that they bought into the concepts and we didn't outgrow. And we also made some initiatives to make sure we had some road projects in place before we did this. But once again, we have to really take a self-reflection and decide where we want to go as a city. Now, there is an argument that some folks around Town Center want to go vertical and, you know, create a more urban environment. But once again, there are a lot of people that say, well, listen, we moved to get away from that. What it really comes down to is civic engagement, bringing people to the table. And that's why I want to change the budget process up a little bit, where we bring the citizens to the table before we go to retreat, before the budget is made. So we get input on what your priorities are, on what you want to see in your city, and how much we should be willing to pay for it. Civic engagement and inclusion is the key to balanced growth and development.
As many of us get older, sometimes our living situations change depending on what we want out of life and depending on our economic circumstances. This is the next question. Virginia Beach residential building codes are prohibited regarding in-law suites, creating difficulties for families with live-in grandparents. Do you plan to pursue changes to those codes to allow more, quote, granny pods, unattached in-law suites, and other multi-generational accommodations for families with aging parents? I guess as an extension of that, is this simply a zoning issue? Is there a tax component? How complicated is this, and what's the solution?
Okay, thank you. A number of years ago, 6 years ago, I started a process improvement task force in the city. Do you realize the intellectual capital that we have living in this city? The retired admirals, the retired generals, the retired leaders, you know, they have expertise. And one of the problems that we confronted was building approval, you know, through our building development, but also codes and everything. And we're in the process. We got to take a serious look at how we do things. You know, just as a sidebar example, a friend of mine's moving back to Virginia Beach after 10 years of living in Seattle, and he's been trying to get a permit on his house since September of 2016. So once again, we got to make things more user-friendly. And a logical solution is to have, you know, those little suites on the additions on the houses. I work in a number of them. They're practical, they're affordable, and they keep families together. So you will have my commitment that these type of initiatives will come to the forefront, and we were going to operate in your best interest.
So, you know, this issue has to deal with the zoning ordinance in the city of Virginia Beach. And it also has to deal with homeowners associations that are newly created and have bylaws that either have opportunities to create these types of housing or they don't. The zoning ordinance right now probably should be looked at in terms of this is a generational shift that we are beginning to see. I know that the in-law suites are extremely successful in keeping family units together and keeping family units safe. They've been extremely effective for making sure that there is adequate child care. And so I think that it's a wonderful thing. And we need to look at some of the zoning ordinances in terms of making sure that they have opportunities in the right places. Now, there are some zonings that these are not the right opportunities for. Also, the homeowners associations, in about the year 2000, every new neighborhood since that time now has a homeowners association. That homeowners association has bylaws and that supersede the city zoning ordinance. They are essentially deed restrictions. And so for the neighborhoods that have homeowners associations, it's a much more complex task, and it's really not a city function. But I do believe that the city can look at the zoning ordinance and figure out creative ways to make sure that we can provide opportunities for our families. Thank you.
Well, as you both know, Virginia Beach is a very diverse city. You have some urban density, you have a resort area. We also have a southern rural area, and this question comes from that. Why do those who have no storm drains and live in the country have to pay for the storm drains?
Sure. It's a good question, and you could say the same thing for people without schools. Why do they have to pay taxes to pay for schools? You know, I believe that we need to do a better job in the southern part of the city of cleaning out the ditches and taking responsibility for some of the things that have happened in the southern part of the city. Now, wind-driven flooding is an issue that is going to be very complicated and complex to fix, but one of the first votes that I took on City Council was to issue the Dewberry Study. The Dewberry Study is a comprehensive report that is going to outline several projects that we can do in the city of Virginia Beach to make sure that we are addressing sea level rise and flooding in a meaningful way. What we are going to do when when the report is issued this month is we are going to begin to prioritize the projects that they have listed that are going to have the most meaningful impact on the most amount of citizens. Now, let me be very clear. These are going to be very expensive projects that are going to take a long time to do. But sea level rise is real. We are dealing with it. The Dewberry report is going to give us a roadmap on how to do that, and we are going to work with our regional partners and our state partners and the federal government to make sure that we create a national security issue out of this. As you know, we have the largest naval base in the United States. It's the largest naval base in the world. I believe that making sure we protect our area from the threat of sea level rise is a top priority that the federal government will help us with if we have shovel-ready, well-conceived projects that we can present to them. And folks, you have my word that we will have well-conceived projects that we can take to the federal government and get the funding we need to address this in a meaningful way.
Truth be told, it takes a lot of money to run a city. And yes, it's a fact that we have different characteristics throughout the city. We have a very farm-rich preservation out there that wants to be maintained. But once again, it's very expensive to run a city. I live in a very concentrated population part of the city, Centerville. And, you know, it takes a couple billions of dollars to pay for this. And, you know, it's right to say that certain people are going to pay more. Good example, certain people throughout the city are paid more to have their dredging done, so they have their quality of life. But once again, you know, everybody may live in the rural part, but they may work in other parts of our city or other cities. So once again, a lot of times the way we tax may not always be fair, but may be necessary. But once again, to make sure that by engagement, that we talk to people about what their particular problems and needs are. One of the things I committed to, that if I'm blessed to be elected mayor, I'm going to have a town hall meeting in every district. And I intend to, if I am blessed by this time next week, I'm going to try to get in all 7 districts by the end of the year so I can hear these problems personally from everybody. Civic engagement works every time it's tried.
All right, thank you. All right, we only have time for a couple more questions, and I know you all want to hear the answers, so as much as possible. A big gym like this, it's hard to keep the ambient noise down, but let's let these guys talk for just a few more minutes, and I know you both have appointments you need to get to, and maybe these guys will want to talk to you for a few minutes before you get out of here. This is actually a question, we had 2 different versions of the same question, and it pertains to the people in this room. I'm in my 70s, a resident of Virginia. It cost me $299 to join the rec center for the year. If I want to go silver sneakers 3 days a week, my husband was 100% disabled veteran when he died. I have Medicare and TRICARE for life insurance. Why do I have to pay this high cost? I guess my extension of that is, what's the point of having a great facility that people can't afford to use?
Well, like, you know, they're expensive to maintain, but once again, I think if we take a look at the fee structures, I think we have to go through a process of re-engineering government to take a look at everything, to make sure that we are being effective and efficient and delivering the services that we're told. And once again, from what I understand, I'm not a member of the rec system in the city, but if there is a disparity in the payment, I belong to the Y system and I spend $92 a month, for the family. But once again, if this is an individual concern, you have to have a city that listens. And in my case, you'll have a mayor that listens, and we're going to have a city council that listens also. This isn't a problem. As they come up, we got to take a look at all problems, small, large, and everything, and address ourselves adequately to your satisfaction.
This is a great question. And I believe that when you look at the value that you get at these rec centers as compared to a YMCA or a private gym, I believe that we compare extremely favorably. Now, that being said, there are operational costs for everything. These recreation centers provide a great value for our residents and add to the quality of life of the city of Virginia Beach. Now, I know that if you went to the city of Chesapeake and you said, would you like to have one of these rec centers, they would beat down your door to get one of these rec centers in the city of Chesapeake. Now, that being said, if there are financial considerations that we need to address, that is why I'm going to stay so in touch with Barbara Henley, who is the liaison to the Commission for Aging. We need to know that these issues are a problem. We need to know if our price points are too high. Now, that has to be balanced. We have to make sure that we are covering operational costs as best we can. However, the most important part is making sure that our citizens can utilize these types of facilities. That's why they were built. Who in here loves the rec centers in Virginia Beach? Me too.
One of the great things about being a moderator is the questions that come from the audience are always better than the ones that I come up with. So this is a good one, I think, for both of you, since we have you two here together. What are the 2 top issues in Virginia Beach, and how are your solutions different from your opponents?
Well, I think 2 of the top issues in my mind are obviously sea level rise and flooding, which we have talked about a lot during these campaigns. I have gotten quite an education over these 4 years, especially since October of 2016 when Hurricane Matthew exposed our weaknesses of our stormwater infrastructure. I've gotten a lot of education on some of the things that we have not been doing well in the city of Virginia Beach in terms of our maintenance. And so this is a major issue that we have been made aware of and we are addressing in a meaningful way. Councilwoman Barbara Henley has been a champion for making sure that we address sea level rise and flooding in the southern part of the city. We also need to make sure that we maintain our infrastructure in the northern part of the city, and you all have my word that that will be done. Bobby and I are very similar, I think, in a lot of issues. One of the ways that we differ is I believe that we have to bring a new industry into our city. We need to grow the city of Virginia Beach. That's why I started this technology initiative. I believe that we need to make sure that we're creating opportunities for our children and for our grandchildren so that we can have a rising tide in the city of Virginia Beach. And as I said, a rising tide lifts all boats. This new industry will create opportunities for everybody in this room, and a new industry is a direct correlation to keeping our real estate taxes low. And that's what you have my word that we're going to be focused on, is maintaining our public safety education, making sure that we bring a new industry into this region, and making sure we do not take our eye off the ball with sea level rise and flooding.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit more basic because whoever assumes the gavel on November 13th is going to inherit a new council with a different chemistry. There are going to be new faces on the council. We have a very unique situation right now where there are 8 open seats. So come January 1st, there are going to be a significant, maybe change in the composition and chemistry of the council. One of the biggest problems I see is faith in government. A lot of people in our city lack faith in our government, and we have to restore that faith. And I think it's going to take, from my perspective, a seasoned leader to navigate and reach out and get, like we had in the Marine Corps. The most effective thing in the Marine Corps was the fire team, that little group together. We have to get a council unified, to put their differences aside and work in behalf of the people. We have to improve our communications with our school board. Right now, we don't meet that often with them, and it's very structured. We got to meet more with our delegation in Richmond to help us find the money. We have to reach with our federal delegation and going forward. And I do agree that we have to bring in new high-tech industries. But the other thing we have to make sure is that the existing businesses that we have, the small mom and pops that are in the strip malls, that they have the opportunity to survive and thrive. And we have to change that economic climate. And this way we can all prosper together to make sure that we are able to fund government without raising taxes on you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.